The salmon farming issue is attracting attention, and in the last few years, the Salmon Coast Research Station has begun operation in the Broughton. Here, biologists from many universities come to conduct various research projects on sea lice interactions, the effects of slice on the environment, and other farm-related impacts. One of these researchers is Dane Stobel from the University of Victoria. Dane has teamed up with local fishermen to study the impacts the farms are having on the flatfish in the area. In recent years, local fishermen have been documenting strange lesions, tumors, and eye parasites in the ground fish around the fish farms. What is clear is that these are indicators of a polluted environment. The ocean resources and wild salmon has sustained a rich culture and native populations for thousands of years. Today, dozens of these nations are still reliant on the marine resources.
The food resources found within our territory define essentially who we are as people. We're proud to tell you that we're fish eaters and clam diggers, and these are some primary staples of food for us in the Broughton Archipelago. What we have in the Broughton right now is a regional collapse of virtually every species of marine life you could picture. Let's make a list. Pink salmon, chum salmon, herring, ooligan, little neck clams, butter clams. And the only thing new in the region is the introduction of open net cage aquaculture for the last 20, 25 years.
We had a meeting last night, and some of the fishermen were saying that when they pull up a lingcod, it's not a healthy lingcod. It's skinny, the skin's loose, and there's also been lesions, strange-looking lesions on these fish, especially right around the farms.
Clam diggers have come to me lately saying that there's less and less clams on the beaches, and to find them is getting harder, because there's actually no place out there where there isn't an impact from the fish farms. And also from the groundfish area where people go out there to get a halibut or cod or something out, they see them coming up just loaded with thousands of sea lice on them, and like their skin is just falling off. And they're even identifying that they can't even catch any prawns next to the fish farms either, where there used to be areas of abundance, but now there's not.
I don't know how these fish companies or the government regulatory agencies expect to compensate our people for the loss of wild salmon.
The people that run Cermaq know and appreciate and understand the impacts that their industry represents. They know the impacts that they've had on Norwegian wild salmon stocks. They know the impacts that they've had in Ireland, in Scotland, and I know that we're witnessing the very same in our territory. It troubles me that the Norwegian government, by way of their trust fund from the oil and gas, is a major shareholder in these companies. Because then I have a look and I understand then that the people that run these companies are being supported by the government, which are then representing the Norwegian people. And I like to believe the Norwegian people have a higher social conscience than to allow these companies to continue working in a manner which isn't consistent with the way they do it in Norway. They're not bringing their best business practice into our country.
In fact, when we look at where the farms are tenured, the tenure sites themselves would actually be illegal in Norway. The view in the independent scientific community is the source of the problem is so obvious to everyone, and yet those in positions of power to make decisions are so willful to ignore the advice of the scientific community that it is now beginning to generate a backlash, that otherwise rather staid and level-headed scientists are beginning to really stand up and demand to be heard on this issue, because the stakes are so great, and we're very quickly approaching the point of no return, where no matter what action is taken, once we pass a certain point in this process, no amount of remedial action will be able to replace what we've lost, and we're rapidly approaching that point. we can take care of the problem. We've been able to take care of the problem for decades, right? Of create a boundary between the farm and the wild environment. It's just that easy. Unfortunately, when you do that, it becomes a little bit more difficult to produce cheap salmon. And so the decision by Cermaq has been to allow the wild salmon to pay the price.
The Norwegian people, I think, are going to have a say in this. I think the Norwegian people care about what happens overseas, what their companies are doing. Our operators want to coexist with the farms, but not at the expense of our business. And we think there is a coexistence possible. We think that closed containment will work, and I think it's going to happen. I have a positive view that it can be done, because in my other life, before I became involved in tourism, I was an engineer, and I would just love a challenge to make closed containment work for farms.
We're not giving up on wild salmon at all. We'd be walking away from who we are. One course of action that we have planned is mounting protests against the Norwegian Winter Olympic team, the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Our tribal council passed a resolution at the announcement of the 2010 Olympics as a target of protest to bring the concerns that we have about our territory and resource activity and a disregard for Aboriginal title and rights that we're witnessing. And it is only through near desperation that we turn to this type of public protest.
We aren't going to give up on it. As a matter of fact, we are working at filing a writ. And because we know that they're well aware of the dangers of the sea lice with their experience in Norway, Scotland, Ireland, and then they continue doing that here, it's, we consider it bordering on criminal. Legal action, I think, is the next step.
The legal cases against the farms and government are mounting, and more are in the works. In 2005, a BC Supreme Court judge ruled that the Jamelco Indian Band was not properly consulted with before Atlantic smolts were introduced to their territorial waters. Most recently, on May 5, 2008, Alexander Morton filed a petition in the BC Supreme Court, aiming to show that the fish farm leases in BC are unlawful and unconstitutional.
The farms are owned by Norwegian corporations or even the Norwegian government. In the Broughton Archipelago, it's Marine Harvest Canada, and Mainstream, which is called Cermaq.
More legal cases are upcoming, and the public is growing more and more aware. Each week brings new headlines, and new campaigns are launched in an effort to bring awareness to the issue and save the coast.
It's bizarre, really, to me that there's this denial of it. And I think that's made the problem worse for the fish farmers, because they're creating this persona of an industry that has no idea of what they're doing and what's going on in the field. It makes them look bad. It certainly takes any sympathy that you might have away from the industry.
Right, the clock is ticking. Right, there is an economic opportunity. There is hope for salvation here. Salmon farming is not inherently bad. It can be done properly, it can be done profitably, and it can be done without ruining the coastal communities within which it operates. Right, but it requires a little bit of forward thinking and a little bit of savvy on the part of industry and on the part of government. Right, this is potentially a good news story. Where we're heading right now is anything but good news.
Well, I turn and have a look at the culture that is our people's, and every aspect of nature, of animals, of systems are represented within the dances and the masks that define who we are, and we still practice today. And you come into our territory, you're going to see eagles, you're going to see whales, you're going to see grizzlies, you're going to see black bears. You're going to see every manner imaginable of beasts. So come on to the Broughton before it's barren.